We're going to be talking about trauma, grief, and incarceration with this particular episode. And I'm going to just come straight out and say, what does trauma and grief have in common? What is trauma? Trauma is lasting emotional response after living through a distressing event. Let me just repeat that. Trauma is a lasting emotional response after living through a distressing event. It's hard to control your emotions and to have a healthy relationship. Okay, I just want to throw those definitions out there. And I'm going to talk about grief. What is grief? Grief is a response to loss. Any event that challenges normal life is intense sadness. So that's what the conversation is going to be about. Peace and love. I am Lady Ra, author, artist, and empowerment speaker. Thank you for tuning into our podcast. All conversations and discussions are based on real life situations. In this episode, as I stated earlier, we will be talking about trauma and grief, and in particular, we're going to talk about incarceration, okay? If you have any question or would like to give any type of feedback, you can leave me a message on my website, ladyra.net. Please follow this podcast. Let's get moving with Lady Ra. You can get it on Spotify and Amazon Music, and it's free to follow. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Lady Ra, Alternative Therapy with Lady Ra. Lord have mercy, I'm saying Lady Ra so much, I'm forgetting part of the information. Alternative Therapy with Lady Ra. Okay. And I got some notes here, and the reason I have notes is because sometimes I get caught up in conversation and I miss something. I also want to just throw in about my books. You can get autographed copies on my website also, ladyra.net. I have a wonderful, beautiful young woman here that I've known for quite a long time. We've always managed to keep in touch with each other, and I'm so thankful. She has a lot of wisdom, and so we just need to share some of the stuff that we have as it relates to wisdom to our audience, because we don't want to leave this planet without giving the best of our world and helping one another to heal. Her name is Dell, and we're going to have just a down-to-earth conversation about grief, trauma, and incarceration. And you'll discover why I'm throwing that incarceration piece in as we go deeper into our conversation. We just gonna be just two sisters just sitting here shooting the breeze. And I'm gonna start out by asking you, Dell. And like I said, I did take some notes because normally I'm just running off with my mouth, but I don't want to do that in a unorganized way today. So Dell, because I know you, if and the audience don't know you, you want to briefly give a little bit of information about who you are and, what you represent and blah, blah, blah. Whatever you want to say, come from your heart.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you for inviting me and having me on your panel. And I want to say hello to everyone. Of course, again, my name is Dale Patterson. I'm quite acquainted with grief, incarceration, and trauma. I today try to give back to those that are coming home either from prison or coming home just from life experiences. I give back what God had given me to give to them to try to keep them above the waters. Whatever questions or whatever you have for me on the panel, God has equipped me this morning. I wasn't equipped early because it took me back. Mm-hmm. So God has equipped me to answer these questions to help someone else. Yes. And I'm ready.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And Dell, I wanted you to connect with the masses because I know your story, and I pretty much been keeping up with you every step of the way. We don't have to sit up in each other's face to know, what we're doing from day to day. So I want to ask you, how did you respond? And I want to know your age too, when you first got incarcerated, because you do have that under your journey as far as your truth is concerned. How did you respond to the trauma of being incarcerated? And you can be as raw as you want, be as real as you want, because folks need to know you are a testimony to someone surviving that experience.
Let me start by saying my incarceration began before I physically went to prison. My incarceration began in the home. I had become a product of the insanity within the home. I witnessed violence at a very young age, around 5 or 6 years old. I can remember saying that I was going to murder my dad. Because of how he used to, get drunk and beat up on my mom. And it's 5 of us, and we're still above ground. But my setbacks started at childhood, and people had pretty much prophesied over my life that I would be a statistic, and it came to pass. I went to prison. I want to say 1995. That's when I went to prison. I never thought of my age of when I went to prison until you just mentioned it. Oh my goodness. I guess I was in my 30s. But I went to prison at a very young age. We were all brought up in church. All we knew was church, but going home and it was chaotic in the house. But when I went to prison, it was an awakening. Not only did I go to prison, my mom, my dad, my family went to prison. They didn't go physically, but back home they had to, sometimes lie to people about where I was, until I became comfortable enough to let them know it's okay to let people know I'm in prison. But they had images that they had to maintain because my mom at the time was the choir director and my dad was a senior deacon in the church. But I always told the truth. Don't never tell my son and my daughter that I'm in school somewhere or I'm on vacation, because when they come and sit down and visit with me, they see where mama at.
Yeah.
But the trauma, oh my goodness, it still sits with me. I never had the opportunity to share my prison experience or my emotions, my mental health with anybody. And it's been 20 years later. It's in me. Because in prison, you really don't do much talking.
Right.
Your life is dictated to you. So that's traumatizing when you're outside in the free world, where you could talk, communicate. You didn't do too much of talking.
Right.
So I became an introvert. And I can remember my brother at the time, it was 2 of us incarcerated out the family, my brother and I. He was already gone, and this probably was his 3rd time. So he was coaching me. Don't get in trouble. You want to come home, be quiet. Don't click with people that are not really trying to come home. So he was coaching me, and I found myself hanging around with those that had life. Why I was drawn to lifers was because they had mastered how to stay out of trouble. So I hung around a lot of people that had a lot of life for a long time, because my time was lengthy as well. But trauma, oh my goodness, it started at an early age.
Yeah. Well, Del, you have really shared a lot of intimate details, and I really appreciate that. And one of the things that you mentioned was that, which is very on point in terms of this conversation, as it relates to trauma. When something happens to one family member, that's a traumatic experience, it happens to the whole family. And that's traumatizing within itself. And if no one gets any kind of help or be conscious or aware of it, an emotion will dominate or dictate, as to how you're going to survive and cope during that whole traumatic experience. For example, the stages of grief. Everybody know the state. Well, not everybody. A lot of people know the stages of grief to be anger, to be denial, acceptance, bargaining. What's the other one? Depression. And I added a couple more myself. Guilt. And I also added peace, because after acceptance come peace, because acceptance doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stay at peace. What I would like to know, which one of those stages, for lack of a better way of saying, excuse me, dominated. Well, you kind of hinted on before you went to prison. I'm sure it was a lot of anger.
Of course.
A lot of anger. But when you got in prison, what emotion dominated as it relates to the stages of grief?
Shame. That bothered me a lot. The shame, because I felt that, in my opinion, I had no business being in prison. Had they dealt with that with therapy, like you had said, a lot of times and I'm gonna use the word Black communities,
Yeah.
we take it to the church or we shut up about it.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the house with a bunch of secrets and silence.
Mm-hmm.
But as it got to stinking so bad, I started just having outbursts about stuff. So in prison, it was a lot of shame. The anger was, oh my goodness, it was rage.
Yeah.
I got on medication. I'll share that. I got on medication to calm my little behind down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there was no reason really for me to be in there, but as a result of the life that I was living, or the circumstances that I was surrounded about, I would have hurt my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I went to the streets before even prison, went to the
Mm-hmm.
streets, and drugs, all of that stuff played a part in it.
Mm-hmm.
But prison is a place that I grew up in. I grew up
Mm-hmm.
because number one, you're gonna abide by what they say.
Right. That's right.
The trauma, it lessened as I guess I was medicated a lot. I'm
Yeah.
serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't share a lot of this stuff that I went through. Nobody has ever asked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling your emotions and I'm feeling your energy. It's amazing. It's amazing that you're here to tell your story, and have survived mentally, as long as you have. Like you said, no one really knows what's going on inside of a person, because we can still hide stuff. People might see you one day and you might be looking all good on the outside, but something else is going on the inside, and they just don't have a clue. And you do become a little introverted, and I can relate to everything you're saying. Even though I've never been to prison, I have had my husband get a 60-year sentence. Someone I loved very dearly. I had 6 children at the time, and when he got incarcerated and that 60-year sentence was imposed on him, the whole family was traumatized, and I was traumatized. And one of my coping skills, no, I didn't get no therapy, but I did self-medicate. I'm just keeping it real. But the thing about it is that, even though I was self-medicating with cocaine, I'm just gonna call it like it is. There's no shame in my game. I was still able to function. That's the thing about our I'm gonna say our people. African Americans, Black people, because we come from a situation. Our ancestors come from a situation and survived a situation where it was nothing but trauma. Nothing but trauma. Our very existence in this country is and was traumatizing, and it's never been dealt with. And then we do generation after generation after generation of packing that trauma on top of each other. Like you mentioned your family, and I'm sure, I don't know how much you know about your grandparents, but I can definitely say that the stuff from my great grandmother, my grandmother, and my mom, all their trauma came on my head. And even though I eventually got my life together, so they say,
Yeah.
eventually I got it together. I know that the trauma of my husband becoming incarcerated, my children's father, the only father that they knew, it traumatized them. So here that cycle goes again, repeating itself, with the trauma that we don't really talk about, because like you said earlier, there's a lot of shame. You become introverted. We medicate, whether it's legally or illegally. You know what I mean? We make up stories, we keep ourselves beautiful on the outside, so that way people can't see what's going on the inside. So my thing to you today, here we are in 2023, have you, and I know this is a loaded question, have you dealt with the trauma of actually being incarcerated? Have you went back, because I know your story, we done rap together, as human beings, I'm gonna say. have you because my thing is this. Now, my mom, I'm gonna throw this in. My mom was 94 when she died. She just passed this January, right? I started taking care of her when she was when she turned 90. And I know that my mother was living in a situation where she wasn't happy, and she's been married 4 times. So you can imagine the times that she's tried to be happy, and each one of those relationships were abusive. You see what I'm saying? So that's part of my story, the abuse. But anyway, I do know that she never talked about, or she never dealt with. She talked about her traumas to me finally when she lived with me. That and then you know, my whole world collapsed because it brought up my trauma, my stuff, you know, and in a bad kind of way. You know, it was like the post-traumatic distress kind of way. That's what prompted me to write, and you read my book. That's what prompted me to write Somewhere in the Rainbow, because I couldn't deal. I was hopeless. I felt like I was going, you know, like, what the hell is going on here? You know what I mean? I'm crazy. But it was just her trauma triggered the trauma that I had not dealt with, that I thought I had dealt with, because, you know, you pray, you meditate, you run with a circle of people that you want to think is cool and everything, that got the like minds. So what I'm actually asking you, based on what I just said about me not dealing with my trauma, and this is just a few years ago, you know, and I'm well in my age, you know, I'm well in my wisdom age. That's all I'm gonna say. Have you actually ever dealt with your trauma of being incarcerated and the suffering, the loss? And I'm not gonna define loss as a way as it relates to grief. Have you ever like really dealt with it? And if you have, how have you dealt with it?
Honestly, I have not.
Okay.
And to piggyback on what you're saying, it wakes up a whole bunch of demons. It
Yeah.
wakes up a whole bunch of unresolved stuff. I've had tantrums. I've taken it to social media
Yeah.
in an unhealthy way, and exhale after I've done it. I'll exhale.
Yeah.
But I isolate. I haven't dealt with any of that stuff simply because I don't know what's down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
You know, I can surface on some things, but it keeps me in a fetal position mentally, emotionally. All the needs come up psychologically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I won't touch it. I won't touch it.
Okay, so let me ask you, because you won't touch it, and I can relate to that, don't, because even to this day, and I'm gonna share with you this right now and everybody else, even to this day, and I just spoke to a therapist the other day, because I say, you know what, Rashida, Lady Ra, whatever I'm calling myself at this moment, you need to talk to somebody other than your children, you know, because they're experiencing their loss and grief as it relates to my mother. But my mom and I, we was two peas in a pod. I confessed to my therapist, and I knew this already, that if I cry, I might not stop. You know what I mean? If I just like really get into how I'm really feeling, it might take me somewhere I don't want to go. But at the end of the day, I realized, because I'm an alternative therapist, you know, I mean, I'm a master's level counselor. You know, I don't have a license or anything, but I am a counselor at the master's level. So therapeutically, I know that the very thing that we run from and that we fear is the very thing that we need to eventually pay attention to and look at, because it ain't going nowhere. It ain't going nowhere. And with me, I said to myself, and I just talked to someone on Thursday. I said to myself, I need to talk to someone so I can like eventually start taking steps into letting this shit go. Yeah, I wrote my book about my mother, but she was alive, and you know, I was taking care of her and all this and that. It's not just about my mother, it's about my whole journey, part of my journey anyway. But this whole new dimension of trauma and grief and loss as it relates to losing my mom, I know I need to talk to someone about it, because I don't want to live my life in fear. I watched my mother cry when she was with me, and I really don't think my mother grieved her mother when her mother passed. My mother went through a lot. She went through hell. You know, it's in the book. I ain't gonna go through it. But anyway, she went through pure hell. But when she came to live with me for those 4 years, I think a certain music helped her to grieve in her silent generation type of way. You know, I'm a baby boomer. I think you're a baby boomer too, right?
I am.
Okay, so we baby boomers.
Yes.
That silent generation was really somewhere with their grief and their loss and how they dealt with things. So what brought her out and continued to bring her out was when she asked for a record player, and I bought her a record player, and I saw her crying and heard her silently crying from Mahalia Jackson's songs. And then I think, and only then she began to grieve. You know, I really believe that because I watched her thereafter. So, and what I'm asking you is that, do you really think, you know, you can't foresee the future or anything like that, but do you feel as though there will come a time in your life that you will need to face the things that you're afraid of? And if you do, why? And if you don't, why?
I think I'm facing it every day. I can say, let's say, for example, my relationship with my son and my daughter, they're well over 40 now.
Yeah.
And I have teenage grandchildren now. And the incarceration traumatized them to the point I really don't have a relationship with my son and daughter. Why? Because mom and dad raised them.
Yeah.
They have the mindset of mom and dad.
Right.
And I try to respect that. I tried therapy while incarcerated.
Yeah.
I would run because it's like once you open me up, once I'm bleeding,
yeah,
where's
yeah.
the Band-Aid?
Yeah.
I got to go back to my dormitory after I'm open up.
Right.
So I brought that outside with me, that I would never sit in the seat with a therapist again. I would go to the grave with a lot of the grief that I have because really nobody can help.
Right.
And like you said, you have to make a conscious decision that, okay, I'm going to throw it over here, or I'm going to leave it over there. But once you open me up, I'm messed up.
Yeah.
Because like I said earlier, there's so much down there that I know I will cause you damage. And you're the therapist.
I understand. I get it. I definitely, I get it. I definitely understand. You know, that's what motivated me to write the book, Somewhere in a Rainbow, because the thoughts were becoming unhealthy, you know, because I left home at 16. You know what I mean? And things weren't always peachy and creamy at home. You know what I mean? So you leave home and you run away at a couple of times at age 15.
Yeah.
That's what I did. So, you know, I know that whole story. So before I like you said, before, you know, my whole thing was to get it out. You know, that was my strategy. The whole, and is it all out? No, it ain't all out. Go ahead.
Let me interrupt. And then as what's in my mind now, as my life was passing me by, people should have put me in check back then. Don't let me come this far all messed up.
Yes, exactly.
When the people was telling my mom and dad at 7 and 8 years old, when I'm saying I'm gonna kill my daddy when I get old because I'm tired of you beating my mama, they should have put me in check. They didn't.
Yeah. But you know something, Dell, you know, I'm going to tell you, and you know, like I said, I put this, I only say this because it brings a perspective to you know, why we are the way we are. Us being baby boomers and our parents being the silent generation, they didn't know how. I mean, I'm just saying that's no excuse, but they just didn't know how. And I had to come to terms with that. I had to come to terms with that, and still to this day, about a lot of things that I feel that should have been addressed when I was coming up as a child. You know, it's like, didn't y'all see the signs? You know, like what the hell? You know, like what's going on here? You know what I mean? I'm running around here, you know, doing stuff and saying things, and you know, I mean, you know, don't y'all see? No. But you know what brought me down to the reality of I'm gonna be honest, what brought me down to the reality of understanding it and accepting it and becoming at peace with it. That's why I say at peace with it, is that when my mother started telling her story every day, because we slept in the same bed in a studio apartment when I went to get her from New York. You know, I brought her to me, you know, so when she told her stories to me every night, day in and day out, I began to understand, okay, so this is how she was raised. This is what's in her. And this is why I was raised. And this is why I wasn't paid attention to in ways that I thought I should have been paid attention to. And this is why this happened to me. And she didn't see it, you know, because, you know, her journey was her journey, and what she was doing and how she was doing it was all she knew, which was hardly enough to contain this energy right here. You know, that's why I left home. You see what I'm saying? That's why it's like, I'm out. You know what I mean? It's like those situations. So this conversation that we're having is hopefully, will hopefully stimulate others to just talk. You know what I mean? To just talk, because even if you never,
Yes, yes.
you know what I mean. There, even if it never go anywhere as far as getting professional therapy or anything. Because I started getting professional therapy when I stopped. My mom started living with me because I was about to go fucking crazy. Excuse my expression, but I was about to go crazy. But I needed someone to talk to that was not that was neutral. That had a little bit of experience under their belt about cognitive therapy, that sort of thing. So, ask me the right questions and let me just tell you what's going on. So I respect and admire, I really do. I always have. That's why I'm always calling on you. That's why we stay connected. I respect and admire the strength that you have, because you still are doing the damn thing. You know what I mean? However you're doing it.
I have a choice.
No, you do.
I don't have
No,
a
you do.
choice.
No, you do. No, sweetheart, you do have a choice. You do. When a person say I don't have a choice, you do have a choice. You can go either yin or you can go over yang. You continue to go over
Yeah.
to the yang side, the light. You know what I mean? You can go to the dark side, but you're not. Even though those things are still there, you know what I mean? And they're always going to be there because that's your journey. And I have to realize that about myself too. All my addictions and all the things that I've been through, the abuse, that's part of my journey. And I don't deny it. I was listening to this record. It says something about my pain is my strength. You know what I mean? It was like my grandson played a song for me about I'm a believer. And part of the song, my pain is my strength and my happiness and all that kind of stuff. And once we learn how to convert that, so we don't have a lot of time left. I want you to, two things: burning desire to say something and words of wisdom.
My burning desire would be, after all that I've been through, like I would give back to my grandchildren. There are some women that have called upon me to help them reset. I'm gonna use the word reset since they've been home from incarceration. And the most important thing that I would say to anybody, whatever journey you're on, whether it's a good path or a bad path, you got to find your way back to God. Don't go so far out that you can't come back in, because I've lost some friends that have died that I'm like, I wish they were here with me now.
Yes.
And we were on the same path.
Yes.
I wish they were here with me now, but don't go so far out that you can't even find your way back. That's all I have to say.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Del, I tell you, girl, you spit out some wisdom. I really thank you for that. And I hope to have you again sometime, because I know we're not finished. Like the saying go, God ain't through with me yet. You know what I mean? And you have such profound, real stories that will help the next generation with whatever challenges that they're going through, or whatever challenges that they may go through, in life, So with closing, I want to thank you, and I want to read something from my little Sweet Tree Color Meditation book. And this Zoom telling me I got 10 minutes. Leave me alone, Zoom. Anyway, this is on page 65, and it says, when you are honest with your feelings about what's really going on inside your head, you become knowledgeable of harmful or destructive thoughts. Once this happens, the next step is to create a conscious change. This is where color meditation plays a part of helping you to recognize and create change within. Now, this is my Sweet Tree Color Meditation book. I don't know, it's on my website, ladyraw.net. And if you want a copy of it, you can go there, I'll autograph it. That's to the audience, the general audience,
Yeah.
So, that's what I want to leave everybody with. Change begins, like we said, having to make a conscious change. I'm not going to interpret the reading, but we know what we need to continue to do. And reaching out to each other and connecting with each other is the best thing that we can do, and sharing and letting go and accepting and becoming peace. This has been a conversation with my dear friend Del on grief, trauma, and incarceration. Thank you. I am Lady Raw, and this is Let's get moving with Lady Raw podcast. You can get this podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music. It's free. Don't forget to visit my website, ladyraw.net. Del, thank you so very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.